All right, we'll get started. Good evening and welcome everyone to the second Stakeholder Workshop for the Vineyards at Marsh Creek Event Center and Amphitheater. I am Alan Bacular, Engineering Manager with the City of Brentwood, and I am responsible for managing the design of the amphitheater project. This Stakeholder Workshop is intended for the business, arts, education, and recreation folks in the city. We thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in this workshop. I would like to inform you that this workshop is being recorded and will be made available online on the City of Brentwood's YouTube channel at a later date. Also, we recently posted the first Stakeholder Workshops on the same channel as well. For the record, today is Thursday, June 3rd, 2021, and the time is approximately 5:04 p.m. During this workshop, please feel free to enter questions you may have utilizing the chat function within Zoom. Additionally, there will be opportunities to speak and ask questions at key points within the meeting. When prompted, we will be utilizing the raise hand feature within Zoom to provide a chance for attendees to ask questions or provide comments. So with that, at this time, I would like to hand the workshop over to Jordan from DLR Group, the project architect.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming back. And for those of you who are new, welcome. We're really excited to continue this effort with the City of Brentwood to develop this amazing new event center and amphitheater in right adjacent to the John Marsh State Historic Park. So we're excited about getting going. I want to share my screen. We have, again, a mural that we're using that sort of depicts the entire work in progress that we've done since last time. And I want to say that we have taken all of your comments to heart, and we've actually populated this particular mural with those comments so that we will not forget them. And then we will incorporate that into our project. I want to start off a little bit and just sort of remind everybody of our agenda for today. We're going to review the project programming. Now, this is not a finalized program at this particular point. We are actually here today to hear from you what are the most important aspects of the project. I think what we recognized from last time, we spoke about the budget for this specific project at a little over $8 million. And I think that everything that you saw that we had presented will be probably more than what that $8 million is. So what we're going to have to do tonight specifically is to really hone in on the specifics that make the most amount of sense for this project from day one. This doesn't mean that we will exclude any major pieces of this project. It basically means that we will dedicate extra time and focus on the pieces that are the most important to you and the community. And keep in mind that after this particular session, we have another one with the residents. So I'm assuming that what you want in this particular project and what they want is going to probably be slightly different. We're going to have to balance that with the city and everybody's needs. So I really want to sort of point out that the priority here is understanding what we need now and basically being mindful of today's budget. So we're probably going to have to look at potentially phasing pieces of this particular project. We're also going to not only share with what we have done so far to date, but we're also going to really sort of lean on you to sort of vote and really weigh in on the most important aspects that you think this project deserves. And you'll see that later on in this mural board. Just to remind everybody where the site is, it is just off Vineyards Parkway and Marsh Creek Road, right below the Trilogy community. I also just wanted to refresh everybody's memory on what our competition board sort of depicted and the specific project pieces of this project. Let's just go to the plan here. There was an entry sort of element that was made up of a quilted vineyard style vegetation, a 350 parking stall lot, to accommodate the 1,000 seats that we're currently identifying for the patrons in the amphitheater. There was a community building at top that housed box office and concessions, restroom facility, an open air barn-like structure for picnicking, sales for vendors, and other sort of various activities. There was a lawn with a wedding pavilion that opened up to the views, a adventure playground area that was made up more of natural materials rather than your traditional playground equipment, a sculptural garden that is sort of integral into the lawn area. Passing through a control point, there would be a future event center, which would accommodate banquets and potentially black box theater type closed events. And then, of course, you would descend down into a natural bowl of the landscape through an arroyo path to the actual amphitheater itself, which would include a covered stage. And we had talked last time about covering seats. We'll discuss that tonight. And a back-of-house performer support building with specialized loading for that. Some of the images that went along with that for the people who were not here last time. This sort of depicts the upper barn area and open piazza with lawn area, a little wedding chapel here with its own sort of small seating amphitheater. The larger amphitheater for the 750 to 1,000 guests, a back-of-house support area, and this future piece, which is not currently in this particular project's scope. But in the interest of time, I think we should probably just get started. I think most of you are already familiar with the project. In this particular area, I have actually documented all the feedback that had came in from last time, and I sort of broke it down into specific kind of columns that basically said, what are the specific spaces that were needed, such as a green room, performer restrooms, stage size, things like that, actually quantifiable spaces. The next column was specialized equipment that would be accommodated in those particular places, right? There was a stage, the question of stage risers, the ability to live stream, company switches, Wi-Fi throughout the entire site. So all of those items have been identified in this special equipment category. It was also, there is a sort of the character of the space. So affordable and flexible and well lit and becoming an iconic destination. We captured every one of your comments in this particular column here. And then there was a variety of miscellaneous comments that I had sort of gathered, basically suggesting that this is an audience for all ages. We want to partner with the local businesses. The dressing rooms should be able to be subdivided. Things of that nature have all been captured in this particular area. There are quite a bit of comments from our community residents, mainly related to security, traffic patterns, protection from the heat, and catering to more seniors in the area. So it's very interesting to see sort of the dichotomy between both groups. I wanted to let you know that I had actually taken all those ideas and assembled, in essence, a space program that broke down, again, the project into sort of 3 distinct zones. There's the upper parking area that included the food truck sales area. There is a upper terrace spot, and that included the lawn and the concessions box office building. And then the lower zone 3 area, which includes the amphitheater. So you'll see this particular space program divided into those distinct zones. And we can get into this a little bit later, but I just wanted to let you know that I think something that the team tonight is probably very interested in is the spaces within the actual building itself. As I had noted here, there are box office a box office space, a box office manager's office, front of house storage. There's an AV rack room, concessions and concession storage, a house manager, and then services for the building itself, mechanical, electrical, and IT. We also have obviously our men's and women's restrooms, custodial, loading, and trash enclosure. We'll also have an outdoor control ticket collection point between the two zones. And then down below, we also have our stage, back of house support, which would include stage entrance, a city parks management office, a stage manager's office, crew restroom, along with custodial, dimmer, amplifier, and sound and lighting equipment storage. There was right now a green room with a kitchenette. I had identified a star dressing room with 3 10-person dressing rooms that could be combined. Each one of those has its own restrooms and showers associated with that. There is also the loading dock, general storage, and also the amenities to make that particular building work, from a mechanical, electrical, fire pump room, etc. Now, right now we're actually doing a cost estimate exercise, and what we're finding out is this sort of exceeds that $8 million. So we're going to try to now hone in on the specifics of what we really want to have for the project. I'm not going to go into this particular part, but this is sort of design excellence criteria from the American Institute of Architects. And we've sort of identified 4 specific ones that really resonate with our particular building. Design for equitable communities. And these are all on the right-hand side, quotes and ideas that have been passed along either through the survey or from our discussions last time. Design for an ecosystem, right? Dealing with light pollution, site acoustics, and animal-friendly design for the landscaping. Design for economy, the building size itself, operational requirements, and the community links back to the adjacent sites and the community overall. And design for well-being, again, acoustics, food, movement, and exercise, thermal comfort, quality of air quality, natural and artificial lighting at the site. For that specific program, I did a couple of, our team's done some bubble diagrams that sort of represent this, and accurately to the size of the pieces themselves, a diagram of adjacencies for the project, and it's not that dissimilar from what you saw in the overall aerial perspective that we had created. But each one of these specific buildings, the upper building and the former support building, I've blown up, and they are located here with those particular program elements that we had just recently discussed, and how those would the adjacencies for those particular pieces. Also with me tonight is Dan Clevenger. Dan is also a principal with our firm at DLR Group. He is a programmer and specializes also in performing arts, and he'll be participating in discussions this evening.
Great to see everybody again.
So I thought actually we could kind of jump right into it in the interest of time. We have about 45 minutes before the next group, and I think it would be behoove us to kind of discuss this prioritization of spaces. So this particular sort of, we call it a voting session, but this is going to be sort of open. I think there are few enough of us that we can kind of unmute ourselves and discuss. I don't necessarily think in this particular one, Alan, that we need to sort of necessarily raise hands. I think we can just chime in, and I think that would be really helpful. So we're going to get into the specifics, but this is really an overall big picture at the moment. And I'd really like to hear from you what you think in terms of sort of the number 1, 2, and 3 most important spaces in this event center that will be most important to you. And it breaks it down from the food vendor truck promenade up on top, the upper building, that covered building where it's open for picnicking, the lawn also for picnicking, the sculpture garden, the playground, the wedding pavilion, the amphitheater and stage, and the performer support building. So I would really like to hear your comments, suggestions, and we'll give this about 5 minutes.
Hi, this is
I
Steve.
do have a question. Can you hear
Yes.
me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead with your question.
My name is Joe Kieran. I'm from 9 to 5 Entertainment. I live locally in Brentwood. And so the area, subject matter that I would be most interested in is actually the stage part, and that would be in regards to lighting and sound production, how you plan on doing that. Are you that far down into the design that you know how you're going to do sound production in a big amphitheater like this?
We have started working with our audiovisual and theatrical consultants that are on our team, part of DLR Group, and we have started to identify all of those items that are specifically related to theatrical and AV system support for the project. Being mindful that there's sort of, and you'll see this as one of our questions to respond to later, whether the project has only the infrastructure for outside performers and event planners to come in and basically plug and play, or that the city actually purchases a system to be incorporated into the amphitheater itself. Or would there be a combination of both? But you know, with the budget as it is, we may have to select one or the other.
Only just briefly, I see a bit of a combination of both, meaning that you have to have some audio capability no matter who's going to perform there. Maybe it's just simple announcements. That's one infrastructure versus if you're bringing in big name bands, that a designed in-house sound system may not fit the bill. You might put a lot of money into a place that won't be utilized because the bigger the name, the more requirements that they have of how they're going to do their sound. It's not like, oh, I'll send my techs out there and just hook them up with what I got. Big name bands have rigorous requirements. Just saying. I just wanted to throw that in there. So your deliberation of, you know, the model of the audio sound production model of what you're going to put in there is very important. Kind of a basic plug and play, and then big stuff. Generally, there's production companies, sound production companies that come in and do it. So that I see it a bit of a hybrid because everybody that performs there won't be able to afford to bring in a big sound production company, but you got to have something for them.
Right. I think we in fact do recognize that with what we're sort of listing here, right? Front, right, center loudspeakers that could be hung for a smaller event. If you're not bringing in your own, there would be the paging system, assisted listening, as you had mentioned, video and audio playback for that. But we'll also be doing the infrastructure for that audio and video. So one would have house mix position, most likely, that would tie into something on the stage. But at this particular point, you know, it's all up for discussion. I don't want to say that we have all this stuff at the moment because we are not 100% sure what gets incorporated until we receive our cost estimates that are coming in the next few days. And that's going to really help our team sort of digest and describe to the city what can be accommodated.
Fair enough. There's two of those pink boxes that stand out to me very much. The digital audio mixing. That means there's a mixing board and there's a technician and how you're going to actually do that. Meaning there's a level of expertise that has to come along with it if it's in-house. And then the other box is production sound and sound monitoring systems for different types of bands. those two, because those two items are the actual controls on the performers or the performance, the audio system that's going to make them sound like whatever they sound like. But bigger the band, the production sound and the monitoring for that sound, there's multiple ways to do it. There's the typical wedges, and then there's in-ear, which requires Wi-Fi and a lot of wireless.
Right.
Those two items are really down in the granular hairs of like who's going to come there and perform.
Yeah.
I'm only suggesting that I don't know that you have a one-fits-all. Actually, I know that you don't. You can't have a one-fits-all.
Yeah. No, I think these are all great points, and I know we'll get there into the details of some of these items. Jordan, I might suggest maybe you look at the number of voting items you have here and prioritization items, because I think there's one we've got to the end that kind of addresses what you're talking about here and which might be the highest priority. I think that really is the focus of, today's discussion, getting a sense of what maybe do you see more of those two scenarios, something that might be I'll call it a plug and play scenario where somebody from the community could come in that have a lot of the audio visual infrastructure in place and reducing kind of the burden of, what a bigger act and what you're describing, where they would have their own equipment that have, a separate hauler that's really got all of that. If we had to choose one, which would we see is most beneficial to this venue and those kind of things? So maybe Jordan, if you kind of went through each of the 6 you have here, then I think everybody will have a sense of how these maybe mesh together, and then we could start to kind of dive into each one. And I think that's really the core of what we're looking for today is getting some of that prioritization in place.
All right, well,
and this will just help us inform our next stage of the process. And just to add to that, when we say prioritization, it's probably not that things are off the table in terms of the project, but what in this phase is going to be critical to getting this set up, get some momentum going in this phase of the project.
I'd like to have some input here.
Please.
Even today's bar bands, ear units are custom situations. Would they bring, if they're big enough to use ear monitors, they've had those made, they bring those in, at least is the case at the pavilion. But when you look at what he said about the basic sound needs, I think that does have to be, and a consideration has to be made that if that equipment's out in the hot sun, it can't live there. Somebody's got to tear the whole thing apart every night after every show to prepare for tomorrow. If there were a small cinder block building up at the top that could safely leave that stuff alone for theatrical mixing, we'd rather have a building, not try to hear through earphones while the sound is going on at the same time. A building, we can close the windows. Some people can't ever stay in that building. They have to walk around and hear. But for the treatment of the actual presentation, they'd want to close those and know what's happening electronically through their interior speakers, which should be the best in the joint. The only other thing, I think everything else is workable. The only other thing that came to my attention was I'm thinking, if I'm, pushing mid 80s and I'm in the front row listening to a great jazz band, as far as I understand, I have to get up and go to the top of the theater to use the restroom. The word's going to spread in the senior center and they won't be back until that's somehow remedied. They just don't like to walk, upstairs and stuff to go to the bathroom. If there's any provision for any water stations or some sort of restroom facilities midway up or off to the sides or something they can get to a little bit easier. I'm just thinking, I myself am pushing 80 now. Well, it's decades away, but those thoughts do come to me. And I think that audience members in this area would be very, very disappointed if they couldn't get
yes. Yeah, I can see. That's a very good comment. So let me run through the sort of questions we had put out there. Then I'm just going to let, for the next half hour, we're going to probably, because it's a small enough group, let's just jump around and just talk about the items. So in terms of like the way Dan had mentioned, we're looking for, you know, the most important piece that we can build now. Would it be the size of the stage? Would it be the size of the amphitheater, or would it be sort of that back of house support space? And think of it like in terms of, I had identified this as give me it 1, 2, 3, but I think we could say, you know, what one would you want to have first out there? Second kind of question. Let me just run through all the questions so we can sort of think about everything. Are we really trying to think about audience size, or are we thinking about shading a specific amount of the audience? Because it's going to be, you know, based on the cost to shade it, we'll only be able to provide fewer seats. Prioritizing these particular elements, again, what would be more important? Stage support, house mix, follow spot, or some of that back of house support, or maybe even the size of the loading dock versus the back of house support. And then I just want to sort of have a generalized discussion about how we might want to break down dressing room spaces. So do we want to have a star dressing room, or would we prefer to have larger quantities of larger size dressing rooms? Or is there some sort of dynamic between having a green room? If you had to choose between a green room and dressing room, how would we want to treat that? And then the last one we sort of touched upon a few minutes ago was the integrated house and AV lighting equipment versus the outside equipment versus somebody coming in with all their rental equipment. So I'm gonna open it up.
I do have a comment for each one of those voting sessions from my perspective. So number 2, what rings the bell to me is I looked at your drawings and I saw the overall architecture of the way that it's going to be laid out, and the size of the stage. In comparison to what I saw as far as the Coliseum kind of and the overall area, it appeared to me in the drawings that the stage was kind of small. So if you can put 20 musicians on the size of the stage that you're building, okay, I'm good with it. But I couldn't tell how big that is. Generally, the focal point of this whole thing is the stage. That's where it all happens. That's like curb appeal when you're trying to sell a house. When you come and you look, and the stage is going to represent everything. The size of the people, the amphitheater of how many people you can get in there, I think that actually comes last on account of that. You only have so much real estate and property. Though it is important, you got to sell tickets, so you got to make it profitable, and you got to be able to get enough butts in the seats. So that's important, but I think that comes automatically at third. The back of the house support, I think, because that's your audio, visual, lights, everything. That's an important topic of how you're going to manage that. I think just between all of us, I could talk to you guys for a couple hours about those things, of all of the puts and takes of, you know, like the garage band that comes in or REO Speedwagon. It's a different arrangement, trust me. Sure. And then, so those are my comments about number 2. If I'll wait till we get to number 3.
Let me open up number 2 to some other people and hear if there's any other sort of, if there's an agreement with this sort of philosophy, or there's some other considerations to yet.
I kind of agree with that prioritization as well. If the stage did not have a place to roll units, is that somebody auditioning? If the stage did not have a place to roll things off stage and roll other things on stage, if there was no wing space, I'll never use the space. And I don't know what company would.
Right, right. So one of the things, you know, he brings up a really good point. One of the things when doing a big production is generally, it's just not one band. Sometimes there's two or three or even maybe more. Well, let's go with your basic kind of a deal that you have an opening performance by some band, and then you have the headliner ticket. That stage and everything that goes on and off the stage all needs to be designed for wheels. Everything is on wheels these days. Like the biggest obstacle to change out from one band to another band is that drum kit. Drummers don't like to play other people's stuff, and they want their own stuff. So the whole drum kit has to be set up on a platform, a riser, if you will, all on wheels. So like in reception time, go get a soda. You can do a 15-minute change out by plugging and playing and moving everything in and out, which kind of demands a fair amount of stage space for all of those things. So when you think about the stage space, from what I saw in comparison to the overall amphitheater, it was looking kind of small. But I don't know the dimensions, so I wouldn't be able to weigh in real hard on that. So, and with that, I'll close on that topic.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about was in terms of loading the stage is that the back house support would be actually at stage level, and the loading dock would be at that level as well. So when one would unload the truck or whatever their method of moving this equipment, it could literally wheel right onto the stage without having to go up and down ramps, even though we'll probably still need those ramps for other accessible access.
Right, the ramps would be for the backstage, back of the house, to be able to, you know, get the stuff to stage it. No pun on words there.
Is everybody sort of in agreement again with this sort of prioritization?
Yes, I would agree with that. This is Greg. Yeah, the size of the amphitheater, I mean, obviously is going to come up again when you talk about how many seats you can have. So I would agree that those are important orders, and having everything level with the truck unloading it to the stage is perfect.
I would agree on all those points. Oh, by the way, so when I say 20 performers, that means enough space for literally 20 people. But, you know, there's a lot of bands out there that aren't 20 people. However, if you're going to do an orchestra or something like that, yeah, you got to have a pretty good spread. And then if you're going to have pianos and stuff out there, that's big furniture for a stage. And, by the way, in the wheelings and dealings of performers, headliners, one of their key questions is, how big is your stage? That tells me a lot. And then eventually eventually the word comes out and everybody knows how big it is. And trust me, musicians want to play on a big stage. It's just ingrained into their nature.
What are you seeing as that sweet spot in those kind of responses? Is that a 20 by 30 stage, 30 by 40? What do you think is that right range, given the scale we're looking at here?
I think in something like that, the depth is as important as the width, because all of that, let's say that second act, they're all sitting behind the first act getting ready to be rolled up in there. So depth is good because it's the staging area if you're going to have more than one act, and also to a curtain in between, so that performers are, you know, they're getting themselves all staged, whether it's a dance team or things like that. So depth is really good.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
You made a comment last time for the stage size being, I'm looking up what we had. You had a 50 foot wide by 25 feet deep. Is Is that still what you're thinking? I don't know, Greg, if you were the individual who mentioned that size, but
That would include wing space, I think.
that was including the wing space.
Yeah, I would try to press deeper. 25 is a little bit short. The typical band, let's say 10, 12, 15 piece band, they need 16 feet deep. Otherwise, they're pressed in there and they falling off the edges. At least 16 feet. 20 is really better for the act. That's the act. Then you have that back of house stage behind it, staging point. That is something in addition to that.
Steve, hey, Greg again. Steve, we also have, gentlemen, the Brentwood Concert Band, which a lot of people from Somerset and a lot of people from, this area enjoy it. Steve, do you know how many pieces are in that band? And
I don't, but I'm trying to think of the size of, is that the one I sang with?
I think so, but and do we know what's the size of Liberty High School's stage? I haven't really measured a stage to know what that size is. Because
Boy,
Joe
I'd hate to guess. I've directed there about 6 times. I'm thinking it's 24 off center, so 48.
Yeah.
And that's before wing space.
Right. And Joe Kern, just so you know, Steve Kensinello is our theater guy. So his use of this thing is doing plays and I guess that's what you do, plays. So you need to be able to places slide off your props and your stuff. So
barns.
Right.
The music
so I mean
the wagon.
The type of performance has a lot to do. We've been talking like bands, but when you have ballet and other things like that, and school dance shows and stuff, there's a lot of props and stuff that go with it, and that's that back room that needs to be there, staged, ready to go, but hidden with a curtain of some sort.
So let's refocus a little bit, only because I think, again, in the interest of time, we want to hit a lot of these other aspects. So let's talk a little bit about the actual seating. It sounds like that's the lowest priority, but we did hear from the community and residents that shading was quite important to them. But what about the audience size versus shading the audience? What are some of the feelings out there?
I'll jump in next. I was the one that talked about the shading, the fact that we're in Brentwood, California, and
yes,
it gets pretty hot. So, but I don't think that we have to shade the entire seating area. My thought is that if you're going to do something like this, let's say we end up with 1,000 seats, but only maybe 500 of them are under a shade structure, that would be okay, because if we're doing some of the things that might be more in the afternoon, you may not have as many people as if you're doing a concert in the evening. So, and like what Steve was saying too, the plays that he's doing, he's also looking for a little bit smaller venues because he's paying his royalties based on the number of seats. So, and I don't remember exactly what those numbers were, but I think they were like 250, and then it was like 350 and, 500 or something like that. So, Steve, if you were to chime in and say, hey, what would be maybe the largest seating area that you would want for a play without having your royalties be too high, that's the amount that we cover. And then the rest of it, I kind of look at it like the Concord Pavilion. You've got 50% of the seating is covered and the other 50% of the seating is just open space, outdoor space doesn't have any kind of cover.
I'd say 2 things.
And that's a very good model. Following the Concord Pavilion, it's an excellent model. No reinventing the wheel. Shade is more important than the audience size, because you won't have an audience size on a hot day with no shade.
Yeah,
no one's going to go out.
That doesn't mean it has to be structurally shade over the top. I mean, at the pavilion, you got people walking up there on catwalks doing special lighting adjustments, and even in shows. But I'm trying to think, is that UOP off 5 when you look and you see the sail they built 20 plus years ago? to shade that audience,
Hmm.
it's a shade. I mean, it's a sail for shade, which could be placed just at the back of the arena on the west side, so that people wouldn't be scorched. I think that thing's still out there in Stockton. I haven't driven by.
Steve, you had mentioned last time, I believe it was you that said that, you know, again, the royalties of the different sections that we could then block off, and then you could say everyone sits in this particular section, so it feels like there's an actual audience, even though that this, instead of spreading them all out. I'd still be looking to get those sort of numbers from you. That would be
well. What I found it from New York, although it took a long time, and also in talking with the Lesher Center general director, was that's what drove the seat size at the 3 theaters there, is that it was at under 150, and the next cap was 290, under 300, which also allowed for wheelchairs and such. And then the other one, they're at 750 under the $800 cap. Now, who knows what this year has done to a lot of the royalties, because now people are broadcasting recorded shows that they never did before. So there's going to be a settling period, but he said those were the same numbers. Yeah, right, just under 800, under 300, and under 150 for spaces for the different royalties. Now, when you go up higher, it gets higher. Doesn't mean it's not a doable thing that could be built in, but I don't know how many people are going to come to the first theatrical event out there yet. I think the idea of making a less costly shading of the back of the arena, a sidewalk, which I thought I saw in between the seats, with 3 ushers telling people, no, this section's closed. We're seating in this section down here.
It's going to be that's a hard thing to sell to people. They're going to want to sit where they want in a big open area.
Yeah, but it's amazing what the right placed black velvet ropes will do. And I've got those.
Well, you could always sell tickets by seat number. Then sell those seats first when it fills up.
So again, you would still say that the shade for this is really the most important piece, like to integrate shade into this.
I'm thinking that, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. And just to kind of like qualify that, if you look at the time and the days of performances that would normally typically go on, so what time of the day, what time of the season are we typically looking at? We're looking at spring, late spring, summer, early fall. Those are the event seasons. And so then is the sun coming up, you know, the sun's going down in the west, and so you really don't want that direct sunlight on those people. So the shading is very, very important, because your window usually for your performances are going to be something like 4 in the afternoon to 11 at night. But that 4 o'clock to 8:30 when the sun's out, that's prime time, and selling seats prime time, you got to have shade for them. This is Brentwood. You go out there and fry eggs on. Oh yeah, by the way, what kind of seats you going to use?
We've got it. That really helps us in weighing and balancing what those priorities are. So that's really helpful. All right. I know we've got about 13 minutes here till our next call starts. So want to make sure we cover all of these. Jordan, let's walk us through the next.
Yeah, I think we can sort of put these all together as one, really. Stage support.
Yeah.
House mix follow spot, back of house support, or, you know, the size of the loading dock. You know, we could almost do that sort of, that strategy again of 1, 2, 3 would be good to go.
Right. That was real nice. You got rid of some redundancy there, because the back of the house support manages both of those things.
Yep.
Stage support and loading dock and what's coming in and going out.
Yep.
So they are all very connected. And, you know, the house mix, that kind of a thing, I certainly do have some ideas, because everybody, you know, they want to do their own thing sometimes as technology keeps getting better and better and better, is, you know, it's a hybrid. You're going to have something for the high school band, but then you have to have the place wired to do something bigger for a bigger name band. Maybe you get Pink to come or somebody. Yes. So those are very important. Those to me, like in the priority of things, that needs to go up to voting session number 1. No, just kidding, just kidding.
You're basically, this is the way I keep seeing it for myself. You know, it's like you almost can't have one without the other. How do you balance all that out, right? You know, if you're bringing Pink in, you're going to need it all.
But I don't think
this is also
we're at a scale.
This is also a local community venue. So does it make sense that they might need a house mix position or a particular follow spot, or do they need, you know, a good, easy way to get the stuff off to get it to the stage? Or
I can tell you that the follow spots these days are almost obsolete because everything is Intel lighting. And when they come into most places, they hand you their thing, a disc. Now,
I'm sorry, Steve, Steve sort of froze up.
If you're still there, it might be buffering. It might help to turn your video off.
My video, okay.
Yeah, or it looks like you're back now. Maybe we're good.
All right. Well, I don't mind talking blind too, but here's the thing. Then, when they come in, I mean, these days, even last time Jesus Christ Superstar came through, there were 4 people in the orchestra: the drummer, the lead guitar player, a sax player, and I think not even a bass. The whole show was on a CD. And in fact, I watched the guy take it out of the heavy duty protective case and hand it to the sound man or woman in that case, and she knew what they wanted to do. So like spotlights, not so much. Intel lighting, that's the newest thing. I mean, that's like basics now.
So Steve, give me a 1, 2, 3.
I like the order that they're in. I think the size of the loading dock, it's not like there's going to be, even Pink only uses 2 semis. One pulls out, the other one backs in. Those guys know the limitations. As long as the semi can get in there comfortably, the dock itself doesn't have to be gigantic.
And I would agree with that too. I mean, again, that depends how big your stage is. And if your stage has enough of that, you know, behind the stage or the wings that you're coming off the loading dock and you're kind of sliding it right to where it needs to go. So I would agree the size of the loading dock is not as important as long as there is one. And then as far as the stage support with the house mix, if that was the sound system, you know, I do think that it is important to have just a basic, you know, PA system. So if we are doing a very small community event where we just need to have a microphone and some speakers, and we're going to plug in a CD player, if they even use those anymore, you know, into that system for the music. So having some sort of built-in PA system, I think would be critical and good to have.
Yes,
I think so,
and if you select the front of the house speakers, I'm not talking about cabinets either, like line arrays or something. If you select the right type of front of the house speakers, I mean, you can hang those out there. They've got covers and stuff that you can put on them so the sun doesn't melt them down. Because there was an earlier point made that, you know, put it up, take it down, put it up, take it down, put it up, take it down. So in designing this, that sound system, that front of the house sound system that you can kind of like permanently put in there to let Joe Schmo, the guy that's not a techie tech, pick up a microphone and make an announcement. And also too that a high-level band comes in and whatever type of monitoring system or whatever they want, they just send you a signal and they get to use that front of the house speaker system. So it kind of, the front of the house works for both the little guy and the big guy. It's the back of the house, the monitoring and audio system for the band, or whoever who's performing. That's the tricky part. Front of the house, that's pretty much straightforward. There's speakers, and you just, you know, buy good ones and you deliver a bang up sound. And line arrays are metal anyway, so they won't melt.
Yeah. Let me chime in real quick for you. The next one. And Bruce, like we have in the city park, I mean, we have, you know, speakers that are hung up there above by the city hall that live outside all year round. So that's not an issue. Yeah. But the other thing I think that's important too is what we did in city park is about halfway in the park, there was a pole with some speakers on it that are also live outdoors all year round. And I think that's important too, that you, when you are doing like just your PAs and your smaller events, that you don't have to have the music so loud in the front so the people in the front are getting blasted and the people in the back can't hear it. So I do think that having some sort of a pole with some speakers on it, just like we did in City Park, that was a great design. And that's a small venue, right? We got the speakers up front and then there's two poles in the back that have sound coming out of them.
Yeah,
front of the house.
Well, that's with about 6 minutes left, and we want to probably just close up too. Let's talk about the star dressing room or a multitude of dressing rooms instead, or a green room, or is the green room a flexible space that can double as a dressing room, and we only provide a few large scale dressing rooms that can be subdivided. I think there's some choices here to be made based on this.
I think you can eliminate one of those. I believe the star dressing room and a green room are synonymous.
I would agree.
It's a room for the headliner to go and prepare themselves. And then the other, and then
theater, it's a room of silence. There's nobody cooking stuff. That's in like a tech lounge or something. The pavilion, just because I was blessed enough to be in that star dressing room before singing with a symphony. There were about 6 dressing rooms. There were great big other dressing rooms for the ensemble. I sang with a symphony. The whole symphony went in this other room. There was a bar. They had food out and stuff, but that wasn't the green room. The stars dressing room doesn't have to be gigantic. But my thought is if the ensemble dressing rooms were bigger, those could double for another usage when the theater isn't being used. There could be a luncheon in there, a quilters meeting. I don't know. I don't do a lot of quilting. But anyway, those, if there were larger dressing rooms, they could be then used as classrooms too, or storage of costumes out of the rain when between shows.
That's
How
great.
much has it rained this year between, I guess that's not a big concern this year.
Yeah.
Well, the rain will come back one day. You know, that's a really good idea. You know, the star dressing room. There's some places, some of the places in San Francisco, the Lesher Center, and places like that. You know, have pretty nice layout. You got to think of, I guess, what's going to be the mainstream of performances that go through this place. Are you really targeting the high-end, upper-level bands, you know, famous people? Or are we more at a community level that we're going to pipe through all of the things that we can do in a community for the high schools and junior high schools and all of the school system? I come from a place that music in the school system was huge. Unfortunately, as I get older, I keep seeing it disappearing and disappearing and disappearing. So the idea of those dressing rooms becoming classrooms for instruments, learning, bands, sectionals, ensembles, things like that, to support the community, I see more value in that instead of carving out some high-end space for a couple guys that might not ever see it.
Perfect. This is the kind of feedback we're looking for. This is really helpful. I've got one more section. We've got about 2 minutes left. Jordan, take us home.
Home here. AV, integrated AV system built in, or we have a system where the outside performers can come in with their own equipment, or and have rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
So we
and
kinda
rental availability is important there too.
I think what would be handy dandy, like when you have a place like this, and you're going to have, okay, let's call it, you're going to have a garage band come in there and play.
Yeah.
You don't really want them bringing in their PA system and all of that. You want to have a design so that they know what to do. They have their own mixing board. They're going to send you 2 signals, right and left. And then you're going to produce that sound over that front of the house that you got. Their on-stage monitoring, that's kind of the thing that needs to be left up to the band because they have different ways of doing it. And then this guy wants a 12-inch, this guy wants a 20-inch, this guy wants earphones, this guy wants earbuds, and then sometimes it's wireless. So confusing. And each band that comes in, they're going to want to do it their way. So if you establish and build the front of the house as a general purpose, universal, high-end, low-end, and easy, so that the people who come in, they have their own mixing board, and they're going to send you a signal, and then you can manipulate that signal a little bit. But the performers that come in there, and the way that, or if it's music bands and stuff, they're going to know what their settings are, and so that's the type of signal you're going to send, and all you really got to do is replicate it. You really don't got to get into gain and treble and mid-range and all of that. They've already done that for you.
That's great.
So,
Listen,
We took the same approach as our amphitheater at Sedona, where we have some fixed speakers up front. These can be removed seasonally, but they're set up for really a season. So you're not up and down every week. Right. And same thing above. So that also helps control sound, control acoustics. So I think that's a good strategy, one we're familiar with. So.
And one philosophy, a good front of the house system can make a bad band sound good. It can. It can. It's all in the sound production of what you deliver to the front of the house.
That's great.
Well, listen, we really appreciate it. I think we're going to be having later, maybe towards the end of this month, a meeting where we'll be face-to-face, open to the public meeting. And so I expect to hope to, with COVID subsiding, to see you guys there, and we can continue this conversation. Really appreciate your time, your effort, and to come out tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
thanks for all your work too. It's really nice to see the work that you've done with our comments. Thank you. We feel validated.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree. Thank you guys for allowing us to be a part of this input.
We wouldn't be where we are without this input. Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Greg, go back to those kids.
Yep. Adios.
Enjoy.